Welcome to the Iowa Prep Sports Huddle, the Prep Huddle featuring two Jeffs and a KJ. Of course, I'm KJ Pilcher with my colleagues from the Gazette, Jeff Johnson and Jeff Linder, ready to talk a little prep football again this week, as we do each week during the fall. Guys, I guess first off, I know this is something we kind of say all the time, but man, we are already approaching week 5. With week 0, we've got 5 weeks behind us, and we've kind of crossed that halfway threshold pretty much. Fastest 9 weeks, right?
Yeah, we're going to have teams in 8-player and probably Class A clinching playoff berths this week.
Really?
A few, wow. Yeah.
Wow, it seems pretty early. We're not even to October yet, but on the other side of that, we're approaching October, and we're getting to that push towards the postseason already. A lot of interesting results from last week and week 4. I know Class 5A is as jumbled as ever. I think there are some surprising results in 4A and some other classes. Some really good matchups that we all got a witness. Last week we had one game decided on a successful 2-point conversion towards the end. We had another game that was decided on a failed 2-point conversion between rivals. And so a lot of exciting things to talk about. So why don't we jump in, JJ, with your games from last week. You had double duty. You had Jefferson and Des Moines East on Thursday, and then PV and Cedar Rapids Prairie. But the Jayhawks, second year in a row under Coach Ed Miles, 4-0 start. They beat Des Moines East 24. Was it 24-6 or 24-8? 24-8.
Yep.
24-8. What did you see there at Kingston starting Thursday, and then the big matchup with PV and Prairie?
Yeah, I mean, Jefferson got out to a quick start. I think it was 14-0. And then, started making some mistakes. There was a fumble in the red zone that Jefferson lost, and then a lot of penalties both ways, and it was really a slog after the first quarter. Not pretty football, to be quite frank, but yes, exactly. A couple of block punts. You were there, you saw it. But it was a win, right, for Jefferson. Jefferson's 4-0 for the second year in a row, and there's a lot to be said for that. When you're getting to a point where, okay, everybody expects you to be 4-0 to win your first 4 games, that's pretty good. Even though the competition might not be that great, still, from where Jefferson's come from to here, I mean, there's tons of strides there. So it'll be interesting. You've got the old Jeff Wash matchup this week, and it'll be curious to see what Jefferson learned from last season when it went 4-0, and then lost to Washington and lost its final 4 games. So there's some players there. I really impressed, as I'm sure you were, KJ. LJ Nightow as a junior is a heck of a receiver, and he does a great job out there, and I think he's going to be a college player without a doubt. And Vernon Benda does a nice job at quarterback. They got some
good game manager.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ish Cavaleros has really good feet at running back and things. So we'll see. I mean, this is the prove it time for Jefferson, I guess. Starting tomorrow night or Friday night. What is today? Wednesday, right? So starting Friday night against Washington, and then as you mentioned, just real quick, did Prairie and Pleasant Valley 38-21. Pleasant Valley win. Prairie didn't stop Pleasant Valley. Pleasant Valley had 6 possessions, scored on all of them, 5 touchdowns and a field goal. So, I mean, that's not going to win you any games when you get 0 defensive stops. But, Pleasant Valley runs out unique double wing offense, real tight, line up front and wants to run the ball and did so successfully. And, Prairie hung around, but ultimately a couple of fumbles lost. And again, just not being able to stop Pleasant Valley at all defensively. We're the keys there. So, I mean, Prairie's had an immensely tough schedule to this point in the season, and I think that continues this week. For the Hawks, a young team, an up-and-coming team, we haven't seen the best from Prairie. And again, Pleasant Valley, I mean, a real good, solid program. The only thing that makes me wonder, as it usually does when it gets down to playoff time, is if it gets behind with its run-centric offense. If it gets behind by a couple scores, will it be able to be able to come from behind? So we'll find out.
Can I circle back on Jefferson really quick for both of you guys? You've seen him, I haven't. Jefferson leads Class 5A in defensive scoring at like 8 points a game. They're allowing. What are they doing defensively to be very effective there?
What do you think, KJ? You can answer that one.
Well, I think they're very aggressive. The one thing that I think what they do really well is they really it doesn't matter. People use the term run blitz, right? And I saw this a lot, I think, against Des Moines East. Even when East was running the ball, they were shooting gaps. They knew that they had guys that could cover on the outside. So they could take that risk and pretty much attack the line of scrimmage, even when they thought it was just a run play. They get a lot of pressure. I think a lot of that might be the teams they're playing. They just know and they're confident that, hey, we can put pressure on them. We're either going to get to the quarterback or we're going to stuff the run by shooting gaps. And they're doing it really well. Can they do that with Wash? Which, seeing Wash play, I think they're solid up front. Can they get that same pressure? I think they've got good guys up front with Braylon Edwards and some others. Anthony Snowden is a part of a good linebacker group. And, I noticed, I don't know, JJ, if you noticed, against East, they had a few defensive packages where it was long down and distance. And who comes in as a safety? Probably the guy with the best hands on the field for both teams. It's LJ now. He came in, and that's a heck of an athlete that can play center field on those long, those third and longs and stuff that can go ball hawk if they need to. So I think it all starts up front and a real aggressive style of football.
I wonder, and just kind of looking at the stats of its first 4 games, Jefferson gave up 200 yards rushing in game 1 to Muscatine, 184 in week 3 to Des Moines North. East was, again, KJ, as you saw, was more of a passing team. I think the key to the game will be is if Jefferson can slow down Washington's run game, because that we know that's what Washington's going to do. And I guess one advantage would be that I assume that Des Moines North's running the same offense that under its new coach that as it did under its old coach, who just happens to be at Washington, the old Power I or Power T, however you want to say it. So, to me, that's where I think where the game will be won Friday night. Not that I know anything. It's how Jefferson fares up front. Really on both sides of the ball, I think, against Washington. So,
No, I agree. And you mentioned the Jeff Muscatine game. I covered that game and I can't really remember. For some reason, I was thinking that Muscatine got a few big chunks of yardage towards the end of the game and then right before half.
Okay.
That didn't result in points, but I can't quite remember if that's true or not. You know,
they all kind of blend together after all these years.
Yeah, right? But I can't remember if Muscatine ran the ball well or if it was just some big plays that inflated their totals a little bit. But I should know that. But it'll be interesting. Grady McGuire is somebody from Wash that I think will have a big impact on how this game goes and how he runs things, and whether the team protects him well. I think he could be somebody that'd be a good catalyst for Wash, or if Jefferson can get him out of his game, that would be big for the Jayhawks. Well, you mentioned Prairie schedule. They play Liberty this week, but Jeff, you saw Liberty last week. Speaking of, high-powered offenses, Liberty, the Lightning, really lighting things up here early on, and you got to see them play Cedar Falls, strong program year in and year out.
What I didn't see on Friday was a punt. Liberty and Cedar Falls went the whole game without punting the ball.
Wow.
There weren't, I don't know if I think there were like 2 4th downs the whole game, and they both went for it and I think succeeded. 52 first downs. This was not, it was 49-42, over 1,000 yards of total offense, but it wasn't a game in which the defenses were bad. I know that sounds weird, but I mean, both teams went on these like 8-play, 70-yard drives, and just these methodical drives that took some time, and there weren't really a whole lot of defensive breakdowns. I'm not saying the defenses were great, but they were. It was just really good offensive execution for both teams. Liberty's Reese Reddig, threw for 272, 23 for 28. Also ran for 78 yards. What's that?
That's not bad.
No, also ran for 78 yards. They had 3 guys run for 78 yards or more. Cedar Falls, they had a running back, Devarian Clark, ran for 221, and they Wolf was 19 for 26, passing for 284. So there were numbers all over the place offensively that were, both teams ran well, passed well, didn't defend terribly well, but it was a 42-28 game with about 3 minutes to go. Liberty was ahead, and Cedar Falls scored, and Cedar Falls got the onside kick, and they scored again. And I think there was a minute 41 left when they tied the game, and that was 20 seconds too much because Liberty drove right down the field and won it.
Guys, I was just looking at some stats. You got the 3 Iowa City schools in 5A. West Jack Wallace leads 5A in passing with 1,015 yards. Number 2 is Reese Reddig from Liberty with 950. Then Bobby Bacon bringing up the tail at only 892 yards in 4 games. They've combined for, let's do a little math here, 29 touchdowns. Those 3 quarterbacks from the 3 Iowa City schools in 5A so far. So, jeepers. That's some offense.
And it should be noted, too, that you mentioned Jack Wallace for West. This last weekend in their shootout with City High that we'll touch on here in just a second, he set a new school passing record, passing Marcus Morgan with that. See if I can find their total. I know they posted it on Twitter, but this last week he was able to surpass Marcus Morgan.
While you're looking for that, KJ, here's another thing. Liberty is 3-1. They're averaging 45 points a game, giving up 37. Iowa City West they're scoring 43.5, giving up 36. City High is scoring 33.8, giving up 38. So that's yeah.
Can that be sustained? I know that might seem like a dumb question, but can you live with shootouts? Or is that going to bite? Will that bite you in the butt more than saying defensive battles?
I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think you can go live very long in the playoffs giving up 35 points a game.
Right.
All three of those teams are great offensively. All three of them have great quarterbacks, but you get to October, it gets cold. You can't depend on your offense. You can't be, you need at least two or all three of those parts of your game to be clicking, I think.
Sure. And here are the numbers here. Jack Wallace, he now has 5,405 passing yards and 30 career starts, according to Iowa City West's X account. Marcus Morgan had 5,260 in his career. So congratulations to Jack Wallace for that. That's always a neat accomplishment when you can write your name in the record books. So big game from him this last week. And as you guys pointed out, that the trio of quarterbacks in the Iowa City public schools off to good starts. And Rettig, obviously we knew what they had last year with Graham Beckman, but he had some big shoes to fill, and he stepped in them pretty admirably so far.
And I will add that my plans are to have a story on Jack Wallace for Friday's paper. So
fantastic. You guys
plans
can see that.
Been laid. Just hope to do some interviews tonight. So look forward to that.
So you guys can find that on the Gazette.com, as well as some of our other the rest of our content. Our weekly Four Downs feature, where we kind of give out some midseason awards, talk about the best mascot. We also mention Jefferson start as well, so you can see that when you're looking for JJ's feature here later on this week, as well as games to watch from Jeff Linder and RPI posts that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. I just want to mention where I was at last Friday, which is kind of the opposite of what Linder and even what you saw, JJ, where I saw a tooth and nail battle between Mount Vernon and Solen, where Solen won 7-6. And interestingly, Solen marches down, takes 6 plays to go 60-some yards, and scores on the opening possession of the game. That's the last score from Solen, and actually the only score until the final 2 minutes when Mount Vernon finally got in the end zone. But this was, I would say, a defensive battle because of the score, but the fact of the matter is Mount Vernon moved the ball a ton. I think told you guys in our staff meeting on Monday that they reached Solen territory in 7 of their first 8 possessions and scored no points. The only possession they didn't reach, that's when they got the ball with 3 seconds left before half and had a kneel down to go into halftime. So unfortunately for the Mustangs, when they got into Solen territory, either they stalled, they had a couple touchdowns called back due to penalties. They got backed up because of penalties. They also had 3 interceptions Maddox Kelly had 2. And I'm blanking on the third, who had the third interception, but 2 of those interceptions were balls that were tipped or batted around, and then Solen came down with them. Maddox Kelly had one in the first half, had a second one where he jumped around on the sideline, made a great play to get an interception in Solen territory. In the second half, Owen Einwalter was the other one that picked off a batted ball, tip, that old tip drill that they talk about a lot. And he got a pick in the second half. So Mount Vernon really kind of shot themselves in the foot a lot, not trying to be too negative, but Mount Vernon had their chances and just couldn't finish drives. The one score that they did have was kind of a 65-yard heave from Kellen Haverback to Watson Krobe. The defender tried to make a play for it, mistimed his jump. Krobe hauled it in and then took off. There was no catching him once he was behind the defense. Mount Vernon went for 2. It looked like they made the catch, but landed out of bounds. So it was ruled incomplete. Talked to Brad Meester afterwards, and you love his approach. He was like, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to go after the win. We weren't going to just kind of sit idly by. Had no regrets going for it, and I'll tell you what, they were inches away from being up 8-7 with 1:53 to go in the game. One thing that does stand out too from both teams, when you're looking at individual performances, I think they had 2 of the best here. Jace Jaspers, outstanding for Mount Vernon. He seemed like he was everywhere, like they almost cloned him, because it was either Jaspers on the carry, Jaspers with the reception, had well over 100 yards of total offense. And then he had 8.5 tackles and 7 solo tackles as well. Recovered a fumble. So he was just everywhere for Mount Vernon. And then on the Solen side, Eddie Johnson, feature I did on him last week is at the Gazette.com. He rushed for 109 yards and that touchdown on the opening drive. He also had 53 receiving yards. Played offense, had a couple tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss as well. So those 2 individuals had an outstanding game. And then one other person, Kyler Jensen, great defensive game for Solen, 11.5 tackles in against a really good Mount Vernon team. Last thing to mention, too, from this game, Mount Vernon a little shorthanded. Ethan Wood, who is the commit to North Dakota State, he was in street clothes before the game. Looked like he had a brace on his leg. Brad Meester said he expects him to return, but just not didn't mention when and didn't want to elaborate on things. Mount Vernon also missing another guy on the defensive front in Ricker, who is among the state leaders in sacks. He was out part of the game as well, Cale Ricker. So after he had 3 tackles for loss in the first half, didn't play in the second half. So Mount Vernon still played well without those 2 big cogs in their defense.
Terrific game. Dramatics, right? That's the way it should be when those 2 teams play.
Right. And it's kind of interesting. Go ahead, Lindy.
They very well might not have seen the last of each other this year either.
I think they're both aware that they could cross paths in the postseason, right? And it's interesting that their game, even though there's 153 left to go, but Mount Vernon didn't have any timeouts, so essentially that game kind of hung in the balance on that 2-point conversion when it was no good. Solen just had to recover the onside kick and to be able to run out the clock. On the other side of that coin, City High and Iowa City West, another rivalry, the Battle of the Boot, was decided on a 2-point conversion that was successful that gave City High a 40-39 victory over Iowa City West.
And I believe after seeing replay or video replay of the 2-point pass, it was deflected off a West defensive back, yet still caught by the City High receiver. I think it was Dominic Salibi. I might be wrong on that. For the 2-point conversion. So, yeah, what did you expect with those two rivals playing for the boot, right? But deepers. Are we sure they're not playing 11 or 8-man football? The Iowa City schools.
I think the Iowa City teams play. I think when they play each other, they just have a rover on offense. They're playing 12 on 11 or 12 on 10.
There you go. But you look at that game and some of the stats. It's outrageous in a sense. Bobby Bacon went 16 for 17 passing, 256 yards. Jack Wallace, who we already talked about, Winnemere, 13 for 17, 237 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, and West rushed for 180 yards. So let's do the math on that. 400 some yards, total yards, for West. And, City High had 450 plus. So
yeah.
just crazy. What fun.
Yeah.
And City High now they started 0-2. They're now 2-2 going into a big game against Kennedy this week. Is this a City High team that we kind of expected maybe at the beginning of the year starting to take shape?
Well, maybe. So they've beaten West. They've beaten, who's their other win against?
Ames. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they can get by Kennedy, that's an if. I think that's a game that could go either way. Then they got Davenport Central, Davenport North, so they could be looking at 5 in a row if they can get through this week, and then going into their Week 8 game against Linn-Mar
with Bettendorf at the very end. So
yeah, so they've got.
Remember last year's battles with Bettendorf.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would say they've got 2 games they should win and 3 games that could probably go either way.
And that's our Thursday night game that Pilcher is going to cover, right?
Woo-hoo.
KJ?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yep. At Kingston Stadium on Thursday. So if anybody wants to show up for autographs, I should be there about 2:15 in the afternoon to 2:18 in the afternoon for autographs. So if you can make it, then great. If not, maybe next week.
And I look at West's schedule. That was really kind of a huge loss. They've got Ankeny next week on the road. Know how tough Ankeny always is. Then Jefferson, Washington, 2 winnable games. And then ending with Pleasant Valley and Prairie. So, 3-1 looks a heck of a lot better towards the rest of that schedule than 2-2 does. So that was a pretty playoff chance wise, and maybe this segues into what we were going to talk about RPI wise. That pretty significant loss probably for West.
I don't think anybody outside of Central Iowa has much of a chance of getting into the playoffs at 4-5.
Really?
There you go.
We'll just mention a couple results. Pella handed Xavier their second straight loss. The Dutch won 21-19 in the top 10 4A battle. A little bit of a surprise in
There you
4A.
go.
Western Dubuque defeats North Scott 21-7. So a big win for the Bobcats there. And we mentioned Linn-Mar and Bettendorf both. Bettendorf with a comeback win, 27-24 over the Lions. What was your takeaway there with Bettendorf and Linn-Mar?
I don't know much about it, but I think my takeaway is that if Linn-Mar was ahead or was in the game late, I think that's a good sign. I think that sure they'd have loved to win the game, and I'm sure they're not believers in moral victories, but that's certainly not a bad loss.
The circumstances there were Bettendorf was up a couple of scores late, and then there was an injury on the Linn-Mar side on I believe it was a kickoff with like under 2 minutes left, where the young man had to be taken off the field on in an ambulance on a stretcher. I believe he's okay, which is the main thing. But there was like a 20 or 25-minute delay there. Apparently, the teams talked about just banging the game at that point, but decided to resume, which led to Linn-Mar converting on a really long pass and getting a touchdown and a 2-point play to pull within the final score, and then recovered an onside kick with under a minute to go, and a long field goal, I think it was 45 yards, just came up short on the final play, and that would have tied the game and sent it to overtime. So Linn-Mar, I think, was ahead at halftime.
Yeah, Linn-Mar was up 16-10.
There you go.
13-point second quarter to go up. Bettendorf scored in the third to reclaim the lead, and then fourth quarter played out the way you mentioned it, Lindy. So, yeah, I also think that's it's one of those games where you're not happy, but it's one that you can accept just because you know you're right there in it against a quality team. It's a good gauge for Linn-Mar to show where they're at and kind of what they need to improve on here the second half of the season too.
And Linn-Mar has a toughie coming up against Cedar Falls, so whoever can kind of get their heads back in it and be ready to play this Friday is probably going to be the team that's going to be successful there.
And our colleague Mike Condon will be covering that game for us at Linn-Mar Stadium. One other result I want to mention really quick, and then you guys can add anything else that you noticed from last week's slate. Belle Plaine moves to 5-0 and 8-player with a 52-27 win over BGM, two of the halves in that district. But Belle Plaine 5-0 right now, and they're looking very strong.
If you hold BGM to 27, you're doing something.
That's a quality win. So we'll see how the rest of that season plays out for the Plainsmen, but a big win. Any other scores that kind of stand out from last week before we move on to other things here?
To me, it's just the revolving cycle in 5A, right? You know, it's you can almost set your watch by it. The Central Iowa, Suburban, Des Moines teams just keep beating each other, and that was the case again. What is it, Jeff? We've had new number ones in 5A and 4 straight weeks.
Every week. It went. Let's see. It went Ankeny, Valley, Dowling. Or no, wait. Southeast Polk. No, Southeast Polk was number one. Ankeny, then Valley, then Dowling, then who was number one last week?
Ankeny, Centennial,
and then Valley again. Valley by 1 point over Dowling.
Wow.
But I think we're getting into the part of the schedule now where those teams are playing
other teams.
Yeah, games that they will be highly favored to win.
Yeah, Dowling's got Des Moines Roosevelt this week. Valley's at Ames. Centennial's at Des Moines East. Waukee plays Johnson. That's probably the best Central Iowa game of the week.
So you mentioned our rankings and our new number one in 5A being West Des Moines Valley, or return to number one, I guess is more accurate. Here are top 5 teams in each class, and then our Gazette area teams that are also in the top 10. Starting in 5A, we mentioned Valley, Dowling, Bettendorf, PV, Waukee in the top 5. Then you've got Liberty at 8 and Linmar number 9. Even though you got some Eastern Iowa teams in there, still heavily Central Iowa in 5A. In Class 4A, the number 1 team, Lewis Central. Pella moves up to number 2. North Polk at 3. Gilbert at 4. Indianola rounds out the top 5. An unbeaten Decorah is number 6, and you can see JJ's piece on Decorah in our rewind at thegazette.com as well. Western Dubuque, number 7, after their win over North Scott. Xavier still clinging on to number 10 at 2-2. Decorah, surprise for you guys?
Yeah, I'll talk about Decorah a little bit more here in a bit, but okay. You've beaten West Delaware, you've beaten Independence. That's pretty good accomplishment in the non-district part of the schedule. And let's see, who else did they beat? They beat Crestwood. Doesn't look like a great win, but Crestwood's played a lot of teams close. So I think that's that's a quality win. And who am I missing? Who's their other win against? Waukon.
Dominated Waukon.
Yeah, in a rivalry game to start the year. So yeah, they've proven that they can win the close games, and now maybe they can take a little bit of a breather this week against Mason City, and then they got Waverly, and then Marion and Western Dubuque.
And that Mike Tangen's the first-year head coach here, but he's a Decorah guy, graduated from Decorah, and was, I think, an assistant DC there for 10 years, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, he said, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. I'm just I'm doing what we do, what Decorah football has always done, with maybe a couple of tweaks here and there. So, and it certainly seems to be working out for the Vikings, no doubt.
Yeah, stability and consistency up there at Decorah. In Class 3A, the top 5, Solen, they stayed number 1 after their win against Mount Vernon. Algona up a spot to number 2. Williamsburg at number 3. Dubuque Wahlert 4th, and then Mount Vernon, Sergeant Bluff Luton tied at 5th. Independence, our only area team in the back half of the top 10 there. They're number 8. In Class 2A, West Lyon, number 1. PCM, number 2. Spirit Lake, Van Meter, and then Central Lyon, George Little Rock round out the top 5. Anamosa, they're up slightly from number 9 to tied for 8th with Western Christian. And then at number 10, North Fayette Valley. They've kind of come on strong after that opening loss at Independence. And they've looked good, winning 3 straight. In Class 1A, top 5 goes Grundy Center, Wilton, Dike New Hartford, Emmitsburg, South Hardin. Then you've got Regina at number 6 as the only area team. Sigourney Keota, MFL Marmac received votes, but Regina in there at number 6 at 4-0. Then in Class 4A, you've got number 1 Guthrie Center up from number 2, West Hancock, St. Ansgar, Madrid, and then Lisbon cracks the top 5 with a 4-0 record. In the back half, Northland 4-0 at number 10 as well. An 8-player. Remsen St. Mary's number 1. Algona Garrigan, Audubon, Don Bosco, and Lennox in the top 5. Then the area teams in the back half. Iowa Valley is number 6, and Lansing Key just drops out. Belle Plaine receiving votes as well. But hey, how about Algona? a small little community, and you've got both of their teams ranked number 2 and combined 8-0 between Garrigan and then just Algona.
Garrigan kind of came out of nowhere last year to win the 8-player title, and Algona's gotten good here in the last few years. They raised some eyebrows right away with their week 1 win over a Spirit Lake team in which we all held in really high regard. So I think they really got our attention there, and they haven't done anything to lose it.
One last question for me about rankings is, in your guys' opinions, is 3A our best area class? When you look at number 1 Solen, Williamsburg, the defending state champ at 3, you've got Mount Vernon in the top 5. Grinnell's kind of on the outside of our area, but close enough to kind of look at. You've got Independence in there. Some of the teams that aren't in the rankings, like a West Delaware, like a Bent Community. Is that our best class?
I think so. Don't you guys agree? I think it's our best class by quite a bit. And you talk about teams just outside our coverage area. I think Dubuque Wallert's been as good as anybody.
True.
They've got that win over Western Dubuque, and Western Dubuque's playing really good football right now. I think their resume is probably as good as anybody in 3A.
I would agree, Jeff, 100%. I think that we're packed in Eastern Iowa. Be kind of surprising in a sense if we don't have at least one team make it in a championship game from this part of the state. So back to the poll and Class A real quick. We get a biggie this week, right? Or Friday night with Lisbon and Pekin. I think Jeff's going to be there, right? And also wanted to mention, I forgot to get it in the rewind Sunday, but Cole Griffiths from North Lynn scored 4 touchdowns last week in the Lynx's win, and 4 different ways. I think, what was it? Rushing, receiving, interception return, and kick or punt return.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty good. So sorry about that, Cole. I owe you.
Wow, that's an exceptional performance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know he was pretty versatile. He had scored the only 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving against Starmont the week before. So 2 really good back-to-back weeks for Cole Griffiths. Well, I'm going to turn this section over to Lindy. Lindy, when it comes to the RPI, I become like Cousin Eddie from the vacation movies. I kind of the plate slips in my head a little bit, and I have an accident and pass out. So it confuses me to all end. And I know you are on top of it. You're probably you've got as good of a grasp on it as anybody I've ever kind of come across. So why don't you kind of give us a rundown on what you had in your post at the Gazette on Gazette.com about the RPI?
Yeah. We're still early enough in the season so that the tiers are really based mostly on record, and that'll change a little bit as the year goes on. There will be a little bit more interspersing. By the end of the year, there will be a 5-4 ahead of a 6-3, or 6-3 ahead of a 7-2. We just don't see that yet because the sample size is so small. The RPIs, I think they're in the 4th year of doing RPI as far as determining at-large berths, which is all of 5A because they don't have districts. It's 37.5% win-loss percentage, 37.5% opponents win-loss percentage, and 25% opponents win-loss percentage. So right now, with that said, the number 1 team in 5A, according to the RPI, is Waterloo West at 4-0. And then 2, 3, 4 would be Bettendorf, Cedar Rapids, Jeff, and Ottumwa. And then just as far as other teams in our area, is Linmar. Let's see, Liberty and Linmar, the only 3-1 teams. I've got Liberty at number 5, Linmar at number 15, and then among the 2 and 2s, Cities at 18, Prairie's at 19, West is at 21. Is how we're sitting right now. And I to be honest, I didn't go down into the 1 and 3s because they're they would be behind the number 23 team, and I just wanted to go to 20. So sure. We'll look at more of those teams, like a Kennedy, as they start to ascend here coming up. So we'll start keeping an eye more on them down the road.
All right. You guys want to have a little fun now?
What, we haven't been having fun already?
Well, I mean,
fun.
Touche.
My middle name is Fun.
What I want to do, I dropped the ball last week on our match game. We like to do that once or twice a season. So happened to come up with a couple things this week for the match game. Are you guys ready for that?
I'm ready.
All right. So we got five questions here. We'll give you a few seconds to come up with an answer, and because of licensing, we don't have the match game theme, or else we pay that. Nathan won't let us do it. But anyway, all right. So number 1, the most impressive team through week 4 has been blank.
Is this
any
Eastern
class,
Iowa?
In Iowa, yes.
Oh, Iowa okay. I just went area only.
Oh, area.
So that's what I went with. I kind of let that out of the bag a little bit ago.
Went with Decorah. Because of the background, it's hard to see here, but I have Iowa City Liberty as my my answer. JJ?
Let's go. That's a heck of a question. And of course, I keep vacillating here. So I'm going to go Solen.
Solen. That is a very good choice. And of course, Decorah, Solen, both 4-0, unbeaten. Liberty with just the 1 loss so far. So, okay, we talked a little bit about Class 5A and the jumble that's occurred here in the opening weeks. So, going into week 5, Class 5A has become as unpredictable as blank.
You go first, 5A, JJ. Now we're trying to match you, aren't we, KJ?
We're trying to match each other any way we can.
Okay. Go ahead, JJ.
My wife's mood when she comes home from work.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
Oh, boy.
Well, we'd just like to thank JJ for his contributions to the Prep Huddle, as he probably won't be alive for next week's taping.
Rest in peace,
she
JJ.
Won't be watching this. She won't be watching this. Don't worry.
I went a little bit nicer than that. I went driving Trail Ridge Road in the Rockies in the fog.
That would be scary. I just went with the lottery.
Okay.
Since that's almost impossible to predict. All right, here's another toughie. My mid-season MVP is blank. My mid-season MVP is blank.
Go ahead, JJ, because we've got ours written down.
Grant Hooker from Williamsburg.
I'm close.
Okay, also good.
All right, I went in the opposite direction. I went north to northeast, trying to get this in the. I went with Price Rochford. I don't know if you've looked exactly at what he's been able to accomplish this season, but when you talk about MVPs for your team, Edco is unbeaten. He's done just about everything offensively for him, and he also is a half tackle shy of the team lead in that aspect as well, defensively. So right now, Price Rochford, my midseason MVP, which differs from offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year that we kind of mentioned in our 4 down segment that you can see at thegazette.com. All right, so a couple of fun ones here to close out our match game. Did you guys hear that the butcher's son wanted to play football?
I did not.
Unfortunately, he didn't blank. The butcher's son wanted to play football. Unfortunately, he didn't blank.
Leave the cleaver at work.
I just said wear a helmet.
Wear a helmet. Okay. I had make the cut.
Oh, nice. Very good. Very good.
All right. I was so proud of that one, which is sad on my part, but that's all right. Okay. Coach Dumb Donald refused to play the running back with a cold. He didn't want him to blank the football. Coach Dumb Donald refused to play the running back with a cold. He didn't want him to blank the football.
Well, you can't see it, but I said cough up the football.
We have our first match.
Oh. Woohoo!
Cough up the football. Linder, what did you have?
Spill NyQuil on. I'm
That
so
would be
bad at this.
problematic. Hey, we got our first match in a couple seasons, actually, I think.
That's right. Let's go.
Good work. All right. So kind of fun with that one. Sorry I didn't have it done last week, but we'll go back to would you rather or who's got more next week in our podcast. How about that?
And we
Sounds
got some suggestions too from Mark Dukes, our former boss at the Gazette, for stuff for next week or for
for 4 downs.
Right?
Yep, we've got a question that he offered up for 4 downs. We can touch on that next week. One of the suggestions we did last year, football concession items that are kind of the food fare that we like most. Do you guys remember what you guys said?
Oh boy, I know turkey dressing came up, and after that was said, I lost all other. That's all I can think about.
I enjoyed that.
That's what I remember too. So,
all right, the game's coming up. We talked about a few of them in passing. On Thursday, we've got City High at Kennedy. Linmar hosts Cedar Falls. Pekin at Lisbon. We also mentioned the Prairie's heading down to Iowa City Liberty. We've got the big Cedar Rapids Metro game between Jefferson and Washington. Couple more in the area. You've got Grinnell at Solen coming off that big win against Mount Vernon at home, and they host Grinnell, who's also 4-0, off to a really good start. Western Dubuque over the win of North Scott. They play Waverly Shell Rock in a good 4A matchup. One other one that I think is interesting, Sigourney Keota and Pleasantville. Sigourney Keota has won 3 straight after the opening loss to PCM. Pleasantville has also won 3 straight. I think that's a big one. Outside of our area in 5A, really the only compelling one I saw was Waukee and Johnston. But you guys, what are some of the other big games that you kind of see on the docket for this Friday?
Well, you mentioned Grinnell and Solen and Pekin and Lisbon. You know, two games that are battles of unbeatens. I think we've got some good ones here around here in the Metro. Cedar Falls at Linmar, Prairie at Liberty. I think those will be two great games. I think Iowa City West at Ankeny could be a competitive game. Did you say Western Dubuque at Waverly?
Yes. It's
okay.
at Waverly.
And Montezuma against BGM, and what's the over-under on points in that one going to be?
Right. Right. Between Brady Bolton and Bo Burns.
Yeah.
How many touchdowns those two will have? We know that Burns and Nolan Kriegel, they combined for 19 in week 0. That might be the bar for this one as well.
Yeah, could be in that neighborhood.
JJ, any games you're looking forward to this week?
Well, I'm just kind of scrolling down the schedule here. I'm a little curious how Waterloo West does against Waukee Northwest. Because Waterloo West is 4-0, right?
Right.
And number 1 in the RPI.
Yeah, number 1 in the RPI. However,
that surprised me.
However legit that may be, we all know, schedules have played a part in all this, but can Waterloo West at least hang with Waukee Northwest, which is a 1-3 team, although it has played close, or its 3 losses are close. 7 points to Dowling, 11 points to Waukee, and 11 points to Johnston. So can Waterloo West hang with Waukee Northwest? I guess that's just one that I'm kind of looking at.
Gotcha. For me, I'm going to be at City High Kennedy on Thursday. I think that's a really compelling matchup. Both of them look like they're starting to kind of get back into form a little bit. We also know that there might not be hugs and Christmas card exchanges between the two programs and stuff. So I think that's a really nice fuse to kind of light the week of competition. So I'm really looking forward to that. We mentioned City High. They started out 0-2. They've won the last 2 games. Kennedy started 0-3. Got in the win column last week against Cedar Rapids, Washington. Big game for both teams kind of moving forward. So I'm looking forward to that one. And then on Friday, I'm going to be at Xavier, Saints Field for Clinton at Xavier. Then on Friday, what games are you guys going to be at for people to kind of follow along on social media?
I'm going to be at Walmer Field in Lisbon on Friday for the Lions and the Panthers of Pekin. Both teams have just kind of smoked their first 4 opponents, and something's got to give, as they say.
And I've got the old East-West matchup between Washington and Jefferson at popcornless Kingston Stadium. That's the story.
Popcornless.
That sounds terrible.
No fresh popcorn for a second year in a row.
What's the deal?
It's just bags.
It's Almost Famous if you want popcorn. That's what.
I do like Almost Famous.
Yes,
I do like that, but something doesn't seem right with not having fresh popcorn at sporting events.
Yes, and obviously it's something that has affected my life greatly, as you can tell. So,
if you want to follow along, we mentioned all the content that's going to be at the Gazette.com. Keep up on all that during the week. Read that after you finish watching us for an hour. You can follow us along. I'm at KJ Pilcher on X / formerly Twitter. Jeff Johnson, you can follow him at JEJE66, and Jeff Linder at JT Linder as well on social media. Any parting shots before we close things up and get ready for week 5 of the prep football season?
Off topic, but I guess that Iowa season tickets for women's basketball are sold out again.
Wow. Nice. So no drop off after the Caitlin Clark effect.
The Caitlin Clark effect lives on.
My parting shot, I guess, would be we saw UNLV starting quarterback quit the team today because he didn't get enough NIL money. Is that eventually going to trickle down to the high school level?
It very well
not.
could.
Listening.
I hope not.
That's just something I thought I'd throw out there. So
I know it would be almost impossible, but high school sports have been affected by, like a softball, maybe probably not basketball necessarily, but there are other sports that are affected by club, and people are like, "Hey, I'll go do this instead of playing varsity sports." Would that ever creep into bigger, larger sports like football, volleyball, basketball?
Let's hope not.
I agree. That could rear its ugly head a little bit.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, for my colleagues, Jeff Johnson, Jeff Linder, for Hercules, for our producer, Nathan Ford, we really like to thank you guys for watching us every week. We really appreciate it. Appreciate hearing your guys' feedback when we run into you at games and everything. I know a couple people at Solen approached me and thanked us for this, and the reason why we do it is for you guys and to help promote the athletes in sports and in high school athletics because it's so important to us. So again, thanks for watching us on behalf of everybody, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.